Welcome in, everyone, to the Belmont Stakes Festival preview. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet. This is the First Call podcast. Each and every Friday of the racing season, we handicap 8 stakes races for the weekend. It's a little different this week because it's the Belmont Festival. So we're going 9 races because there's 9 grade ones over Friday and Saturday. And we bumped it up a day early, Thursday, recording our podcast here. So any late breaking information you have towards the Belmont Stakes after our recording of the podcast, be sure to check back with First Bet and Express Bet. And of course, check out the first wager guide for the Belmont Stakes where we've got all your information. In fact, some of you are watching and viewing right now within the confines of the first Belmont Stakes wager guide. So enjoy all the content there, the stats, the trends, the workout replays, everything that gets you set up for a big weekend at Belmont Park. Or not Belmont Park. I knew I was going to do that. It's going to set you up for a big weekend at Saratoga. You know, after like 150 years at Belmont, you kind of get used to saying the Belmont Stakes at Belmont, Jeff Siegel. But we are at Saratoga. They're live racing today at Saratoga. The 4-day festival starts today, Thursday through Sunday. Can't wait to get started handicapping this weekend.
It's funny you bring that up because I felt I would be the first to make that mistake. And even when I practiced to say Saratoga, it still is when I'm looking at the form, and I know it's Saratoga, but I'm still envisioning those, the miles, 1 turn, mile and eighths and stuff like that. And then, no. It's 2 turns, it's Saratoga. Anyway, so, but it's been fun handicapping, and, this is a great weekend of racing. That's why we have the 9 grade ones. And sometimes when you have a lot of grade ones to handicap, you end up with a bunch of 1 to 2 shots and short prices, and they're small fields. And these fields, I mean, I'm not saying every one of them is huge, but there's contention in every race. Yeah. You can't just default to the logical short price favorite. And so it's been fun doing these 9 grade ones, and of course we'll do the other races as well for print and for the Express Bet website. But I think I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun. Looks like we're going to avoid the rain on Saturday, which is good. Hey, let's get going. And 4 days of great racing at Saratoga.
All right. For the benefit of those of you watching on YouTube or on X, be sure to like and share this out, help build our audience up. We do this every week, like we said, so not just for the Triple Crown events. For those of you listening on our traditional audio podcast channels, let's give you the lineup of races that Jeff and I are going to handicap over the next 45 minutes or so. We're going to look at 3 races from Friday at Saratoga, the Just a Game, the New York, and the Acorn. 2 on the turf, 1 on the dirt. The Acorn, of course, the Phillies version of the Belmont Stakes, and they're getting even closer in distance this year than they've ever been before. We'll talk about that. Saturday's action includes 6 grade ones amongst 9 stakes races on the card. The Ogden Phipps, the Woody Stevens, the Japer on grass, the Met Mile back on the dirt, the Manhattan on the turf, and then, of course, the Belmont Stakes, final jewel in the Triple Crown. Those will be our 6 Saturday stakes races that we handicap for you from Saratoga. Tournament players, a lot cooking this weekend, including the $1,500 Belmont Stakes Challenge. Those are for Saratoga races only on Saturday. Be sure to check out that real money tournament at expressbet.com/tournaments. Get all the information you need. Also, you can get qualified for that $1,500 tournament. If you play well in the feeder tournament today, Thursday, or Friday, there's 2 ways to qualify there at $80 entry fees. So check that out on the Saratoga feeders Thursday and Friday. Also, some big handicapping tournaments to come in upcoming weeks. We've got feeders at Canterbury Thursday and Saturday, and we also have feeders at Santa Anita on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Santa Anita with 2 weeks of racing left in their season this week and then next before they wrap things up. All right, Jeff, let's get handicapping on the Friday card at Saratoga. We're going to start off in race number 10. It's the Just a Game. We should just call it the Just the Brown. Chad Brown, that is. He's got 5 of the 7 entrants in this race, and that would be the most remarkable thing about the race. If he hadn't won the race 6 of the last 7 years, that's even more remarkable than having 5 of the 7 in this particular spot. We can't beat Chad Brown, can we?
I'm not going to try. I'm looking at the field here, and I'm not surprised that Chad Brown's got 5 of the entrants. I'm just thinking, why don't any of the other trainers have these kinds of horses too? I mean,
right.
There are guys who would actually train a long distance turf filly or mare in New York that aren't Chad Brown, and yet he gets he gets them all, So I got to figure out which of these five or which of the five is going to win. I think that he'll probably have a winner among that group. I mean, I liked Capice last time out when she made her U.S. debut. And I heard some interviews with Chad before the race on the national broadcast. And that's all he wanted to talk about was her. Yeah. I mean, and in looking at her races last year, I could see why. I mean, she ran fourth to Inspiral and had some other races that were outstanding. I looked at her work tab. I thought she might be fit. So, and so did the public. She was the favorite and got beat by a neck by stablemate Chili Flag. And, it was just one of those races. But here's why I'm picking Capice this time. One of the reasons, anyway. I thought she was a little bothered at the start and lost her early position. She's not one of these fillies that have a massive big tick. She prefers to be in the fray. And I thought she was given too much to do. Also, if you look at her form from last year, she came off a long layoff. She was a favorite, 2-1 in a 15-runner field, ran awful. And then the next time she came out of that, next time after that, she won for fun. So she may be the kind of filly who just needs a run before she's tight. And yet she still ran very well last time. I expect to see the best of her form in this race. I think Capice, who is 3-1 in the morning line, Frankie riding her back, I think she is going to put it all together and this time beat her stablemates and win this race.
This is essentially a rematch of two different races, the Jenny Wiley at Keeneland and then the Distaff Turf Mile on the undercard at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Derby Day. Let's go back to that Derby Day race and give the fans a listen and a look at how that race turned out. The Distaff Turf Mile, of course, again, as you mentioned, won by Chili Flag. Coppice came in second in that race as the favorite.
They've got 4 lengths on the udders, and starting to put it a bit for the back of the pack is Mission of Joy, who swings up on the far outside. Ascendancy, a long shot is there too. Then comes Delahaye. Coppice is closing through it between horses. Chili Flag is coming up on the outside, and here come all 3 of those Chad Brown runners, and Chili Flag takes the lead. Coppice on the inside runs with her. Delahaye is third. It is Chili Flag over Coppice. Delahaye was third. Chad Brown, 1, 2, 3.
And those Chad Brown runners are going to come from off the pace, but Chad's also probably got the pacemaker in here in White Beam, a horse who went to the front last year and ran a really strong race in the Diana, pressing the pace and able to get by in Italian, the speedster from the Brown Barn. Maybe White Beam goes to the front in here. Also, Bouti Cachet, who we're going to see in another race, a horse coming out of the Jenny Wiley, was able to win that race wire to wire under Frankie Dettori. Dettori's winning everything in sight since he's come east. I mean, he won the Jersey Derby on Saturday last week. On Friday, he won the big races at Penn National, going 2 for 2 there in the stakes races. So Dettori's been riding excellent with his sojourn to the East Coast after riding in California all year. He's got the ride on Coppice in here, Dettori to ride back. We'll see. Bouti Cachet was the horse Dettori rode last time. He jumps off that one now to ride Coppice, and I think that's a good sign for your pick.
I think you saw him at Penn National, did you not, Jeremy?
I did. Yeah. I gotta say, I've been in the game a long time, long enough to be kind of cynical and sour about everything, like when you're around so long. I turned into a complete fan. I had my family there with me, my wife and my daughter. I said, hey, we're going to Penn National tonight because Frankie Dettori's riding. And they're like, who's Frankie Dettori, right? I mean, they're not racing people. But once they were there and they got caught up with it and the local people kind of started to hear whispers about who this guy was. When he won the first race in the Penn National Oaks, there wasn't like a small crowd around the winner's circle. But people started kind of like whispering around, like, this guy's a big deal. This guy's a big deal. And then, of course, the flying dismount that he had in the Oaks, and then he came back into the flying dismount in the Penn Mile, and people were kind of going crazy for it. And I got to say, I became a fan again that night, and it was really, really cool. It wasn't from a gambling standpoint. Had a decent night. I think I made about $100 on the card overall, and we split that up with the family, just kind of playing around, but it wasn't a gambling night to be there. It was a night to be a fan. And it was really cool because Dettori kind of transcends like normal racing, right? I mean, he's kind of like iconic. And when he shows up at some of these places in this farewell tour, it kind of feels like a great NBA player or a great major league player who kind of, does the retirement tour, right? And everybody gives him a rocking chair and whatever as they visit a town on their way towards retirement. I don't know, like if you saw him ride the entire meet at Santa Anita, it probably wore off after, a couple times. But for people in other areas to see him, like at Monmouth last weekend at Penn National, it was really, really cool, I got to say. And it's the first time I've been a fan in racing, like just kind of like excited as a fan, probably in like 10 years. And that was pretty cool.
By the way, did you happen to ask him about retiring? Is he still contemplating that? I don't think so, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the way he's going, why would you? I mean, he's really going well.
Talk about an ill-advised decision he made that he thankfully corrected towards the end of that. I think I'll keep riding.
A funny story. We'll get off the path just a little bit, but we're standing around the winner's circle after he wins, and this lady's next to me who is British, and I talked to her a little bit after the fact because it just caught me off guard that someone in outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, has got a British accent, and her young son's like, "How did he do it? How did he do it?" And she just said, "He's Frankie Dettori, best in the world." And it just sounded like this, like Mary Poppins kind of voice. And it was just like so apropos. It's like, he is best in the world. And of course, she said she's a transplant to Central Pennsylvania and wanted to come see Frankie Dettori ride because she's, an international racing fan. So it was really cool. And that was a neat experience. And we'll see if Frankie can get another big win on a big stage. Jeff's got him with Coppice in the Just a Game Stakes race number 10 on Friday at Saratoga. To the 11th we go. It's the New York Stakes, and if Chad Brown's been dominant in the first stakes we talked about, it's been pretty good in this one too. The New York Stakes, he's won 5 times since 2016, including the last 2 years. But of those 5 wins, Jeff, only one of the 5 came with the favorite. So the other Chad's not a bad way to go in these particular kind of spots. And he's got McCulloch in here, who was 3rd in this race last year. Of course, Didia, the runner-up in this race last year, is back as well. They won't have to run against Market Segmentation, who won this race a year ago for Chad Brown. Who are you looking at in this year's New York Stakes?
I looked at English Rose, who I thought ran really well in her U.S. debut in the Jenny Wiley. She's a lightly raced daughter of Frankel, 4 years of age, but only with 5 starts. So she's fresh, improving, and dangerous. I know they were expecting her to win in the last race, but the leader got loose on the lead, and you know how that can happen.
Right.
When you hand Butte Kashi, is that how it's pronounced? She got loose, and English Rose was kind of boxed in, and we'll see that tape. But I thought she stayed on very nicely, and her form overseas was good. I mean, terrific. I looked at some of her races in Dubai, and the time form ratings were outstanding. I think she's going to make amends, especially with William Buick riding her, who he knows her. And by the way, you talk about Frankie being a great rider. If he ever decided to come over, Buick would be right up there with the best. He is as good as it comes. Anyway, I'm going to go with English Rose, 3-1, nice 2-hole post, good tactical speed. I think she's going to step forward, and I think she's going to be really hard to beat.
She came over for the race in April at Keeneland, didn't go back over. So this is one of those second off the plane situations. Let's take a look at her first start in the Jenny Wiley stateside.
The top of the lane. Boot to Cachet still has the lead. Didia, English Rose toward the inside. Then Surge Capacity. Gina Romantica is still 6 lengths away. They're into the final furlong. Boot to Cachet leads it. English Rose to the inside. Didia still there. Boot to Cachet in front. English Rose is still 2 lengths away. Boot to Cachet in deep stretch here, chased by English Rose. Boot to Cachet, 25-1 upset under Frankie Dettori in the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley.
So good runner-up effort in there. Of course, Brown also has royalty interest in this race. Horse coming off a win in the Sheepshead Bay at Aqueduct. You've got Star Fortress in this race for Cherie DeVos, having just a tremendous year. If you saw the race in the Cardinal last November, the first start in the U.S. for Star Fortress, you would be shocked to know that this horse is 0 for 4 since then, Jeff. This looked like future stardom in the American Filly and Mare Turf division, and she just hasn't been able to run back to anything close to that race in her last 4.
I wasn't sure whether I could trust that race that she won. It was a terrific race over a turf course that can play a little funny sometimes, especially when it gets a little water on it. She hasn't run back to that and that's one of the reasons why she's 20-1. Gotta ask you about how do you interpret Warlike Goddess? 7 years of age. She was scratched. Was it a Keeneland? I think it was.
Right.
And then I think she might have missed some time, and so she hasn't been out since November. And this strikes me as kind of like just to get their cobwebs off type of race, pointing for the big Saratoga meeting. So I'm not sure what to do with her, other than the fact that while she has the ability to win a middle distance type of race like this, she's been primarily a marathoner. I'm not sure whether that this is the most important race on her agenda for this year. So I'm going to watch one from Warlike Goddess. Do you give her much of a look, or you just want to see one first?
Yeah, I think this is a get back race, right? This is just to get her back into the flow. Given the distance, the fact that she's missed time trying to get back, and she's 7 years old, right? I mean, she's run well coming back first start of the year in the past, but the older you get, just like you and I, right? It's harder to get out of bed in the morning. It's harder to get back on the beam. The older horses get, I think, the more they need to kind of run it back into their form a little bit, and I think she'll be in that situation. None of the workouts are pressing her, you know. They're very casual. I don't think they're going to ask for a ton from her. And at 4-1 in the morning line, I think you definitely try to beat Warlike Goddess in this spot. If she wins, you become a fan and you say, wow, she's really something. But from a gambling standpoint, I think you got to try to knock her off in this particular spot. Joseph O'Brien's got one in here. We didn't talk about that one either. American Sonia. This is Frankie Dettori riding this one, coming off a Group 3 win in France. So you got Joseph O'Brien, you got Godolphin and Appleby. This is a real international type cast with a star mare like Warlike Goddess, with a handful of Chad Browns. There's a lot of cool ways you can go in the New York Stakes. A mile and 3/16 on the grass coming up on Friday. And again, rain expected Thursday and Friday in Saratoga. So very likely that this New York Stakes is going to be run on a turf course. It's got a good amount of give to it. So those European experienced horses and horses who have had some of that foreign bloodlines probably are going to move up on the softer going there at Saratoga. Let's move to the 12th race on the card on Friday. It's the feature event as the Belmont Stakes Festival runs Thursday through Saturday. It's the featured race on the Friday card. The 1 1/8 Acorn Stakes, $500,000 grade 1 and 1 1/8, significant in the Acorn. The longest they've run this race for most of its history. It was a 1 mile race. It moved to a 1.16 last year at Belmont Park. That's still a one-turn race. So for the first time, it's a 1 1/8 around 2 turns. The Belmont Stakes is shortened to a 1.25 miles. So really, we're used to seeing a half-mile distance between the Belmont Stakes and the Acorn Stakes. This year, it's just a furlong difference in distance. Jeff, the Kentucky Oaks winner, Torpedo Anna, in here. And as she runs back to her Oaks, it's a good chance they're running for second.
But meanwhile, Torpedo Anna is still there, and Ways and Means is right alongside, and Just FYI is making her run, and the three of them will come to the top of the stretch. 3/4, 111, 175, and they're into the stretch, and Torpedo Anna tries to take him all the way. Just FYI has moved up on the outside. Ways and Means has started to get way. Regulatory Risk has run a big one, and is down the center of the track. Torpedo Anna still going strong at the 16th pole. Oh, she's got plenty left. And Brian Hernandez and Torpedo Anna dominate the 150th Kentucky Oaks. And then it was just FYI, followed by Regulatory Risk, Ways and Means, and Everland.
Since 2017, 4 winners of the Acorn were horses who came out of the Kentucky Oaks. 3 of them swept both editions. So we saw it last year with Pretty Mischievous winning the Oaks and then coming back and winning the Acorn. And now this year, the Acorn is essentially the Oaks. It's a 2-turn 1 1/8. So shouldn't that correlation be even stronger between the Oaks and the Acorn now?
Yeah, I looked at Torpedo Anna's last race. And first of all, I was surprised she was on the lead. And she actually went pretty quick the first part. I thought they would let it kind of use a stock and pounds type of a strategy there. She would have none of that, and took the control. And at the top of the stretch, I thought, okay, Just FYI is going to kind of gobble her up here. And it was the other way around.
Right.
And, Torpedo Anna has been looking, what I've been reading anyway, has been looking terrific since then. She's had plenty of time now to recover from what had to be a taxing race. But, I mean, her numbers are rising with every start. She's a versatile type of filly who can win on the lead or from off the pace. And the one she got beat in the Goldenrod, that was back in November, her last start of her 2-year-old campaign, behind a filly who has not trained on Intricate very well. But on the other 4 starts, all of the wins not only were convincing and had good numbers, but they were by daylight. I mean, I think our average margin of victory had been 5 or 6 lengths, something like that. So there's no reason in the world why she won't do it again. I mean, if that was a one-off or it was a sloppy track win, and you figure, well, maybe the mud moved her up. Right. She's just as fast on dry land. That's not going to bother her. I mean, she's 8-5 on the morning line, and I think you and I would take that right now if we could get it. Sure. I don't think we're going to get it. Right. I think she's really, really good. And numbers-wise, she's almost to the point where you can say she's not quite there yet, but she's pretty competitive with the older mares now, which she won't have to even worry about until the fall. So I don't see any reason why she won't continue her winning ways here.
In the event that Kenny McPeak didn't train Kentucky Derby winner Mystic Dan, there's a really good chance she would have been in the Belmont Stakes. And so that just kind of tells you what kind of quality I think they're dealing with Torpedo Anna. Now, the one caveat about this is it's a tough post position because 1 1/8 races at Saratoga start at the finish line. It's a short run. Remember, it's a 9-furlong oval at Saratoga. They're going to start right at the finish line with a short run into the first turn. Becky's Joker, the one's going to scratch out of here, out of the Acorn, because she's entered today on Thursday to run in the Jersey Girls Stakes, and her trainer Gary Contessa said she's going to run on Thursday instead, so we expect her to come out. So Power Squeeze, Leslie's Rose, just FYI, they're going to get an advantageous run into that clubhouse turn, and that's probably worth 2 or 3 lengths the way you cut that corner and with some early speed. So it'll be interesting if she's going to have to be 2 to 3 lengths better than those horses to her inside that are of high quality. Fortunately for her, she was 4 3/4 better in the Kentucky Oaks, and like you said, average margin of victory about 5 or 6. But she's probably going to lose 2 to 3 lengths on those horses going into the clubhouse turn in ground loss, and they'll have an advantage cutting that corner. Power Squeeze, Leslie's Rose. If you're going to try to get around the favorites in this race, those would be the ones of the most interest. Power Squeeze at 12-1, I thought was going to run a much better race in the Kentucky Oaks, and she didn't after getting away more slowly than I expected. Maybe Javier Castellano sends her out of there now that she'll be on the rail. Power Squeeze one, I think, maybe at a price that you want to look at perhaps in your exotics, but you've got to beat in here, obviously, Torpedo Anna. Just FYI, I expected that she'd be a little bit short in the Kentucky Oaks, maybe after just having the one race in the Ashland. She kind of trained like a monster, not kind of trained like a monster. She did train like a monster into the race, and I thought maybe she could overcome that short resume, but it kind of, I think, got her in the last 1/8 of a mile. She should be fitter and should be better in this particular spot, so you can expect a good race out of her. Whether or not she's going to get the 1 1/4, we'll find out. Of course, she's by Justify. What a week for Justify, right, Jeff? I mean, he sired City of Troy, a dominant winner in the Epsom Derby last week. He could come back with an Acorn filly in here in just FYI. Things are going swimmingly well for Justify at the highest levels in the breeding game right now. I think you said the other day that we're looking potentially at the Travers maybe for the European horse, City of Troy for Aidan O'Brien.
The ultimate goal is the Breeders' Cup Classic on dirt. And they figure, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well try him against 3-year-olds only in the Travers. And he's such a beautiful mover, and he's by Justified. There's no reason why he shouldn't like the dirt. Might as well find out right off the bat. I mean, you can continue to run him on grass, and I don't think he'll prove too much by continuing to beating the same 3-year-olds. If you bring him over here, not only is it great for his breeding and for his stud career, as if he needed any more help than he's already got, but the owners are sportsmen. They'd like to come over and do something that's never been done. So, you talked about Justify and Just FYI. But the thing about Just FYI is, even though she was a champion last year, she was never very fast on figures. I mean, she never earned a barn number even as fast as 80. So maybe she was just the best of a weak lot. I don't know. And she's run better this year on numbers, but nothing like what Torpedo Anna's done. So I think the dominance that Torpedo Anna showed in the Oaks over Just FYI will continue in this race.
And maybe by the time we get to the Travers, we might see Torpedo Anna in the Travers against the boys and against another Justify in there. What a Travers could be lining up there. If City of Troy comes over, Torpedo Anna moves forward, and whatever we get out of this Belmont Stakes in terms of the alumni could be a big-time summer to watch at Saratoga. Of course, we're going to watch the Saturday racing at Saratoga as we move on our schedule from Friday to Saturday, where there are 6 Grade 1 stakes races amongst 9 stakes on a 14 race card. Again, be sure to check out the wager guide, the first Belmont Stakes wager guide for all of the coverage of the big races at Saratoga over the course of the weekend. Stats, trends, handicappers analysis, first bet AI picks for all 26 races, I believe, over the 2 days between Friday and Saturday. All the historical look that you want going into the Belmont Stakes and the undercard races. So check that out. Again, the wager guide from First Up. And Adam, we started this back in 2007, and the wager guides are the industry standard for handicapping information leading into all the big events. Go to news.first.com and click on the wager guide button there, or go into the First Bet app and you can download it right out of the app. Free access to the wager guide. Updated information. I can tell you this later today. Eddie Olczyk on Thursday will check in with his picks and betting strategies for the Belmont Stakes. That'll be new to the guide on the Thursday update. All right, Jeff, let's go back to our handicapping as we get to Saturday. We're going to start things off in the Ogden Phipps Stakes. The Ogden Phipps, 1 mile and an eighth, and this may be the race of the year so far in the Breeders' Cup Distaff division. Steve Asmussen's won this race 4 of the last 5 years. He's polite enough to step aside and let somebody else win it this year. He does not have a horse entered in this race, but a lot of big names are here. We've got Idiomatic, of course, the winner of the Personal Ensign last year and the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She came back with a win in the La Troyenne at Churchill Downs. We have last year's Acorn and Oaks winner, that being Pretty Mischievous. You've got randomized in here. Horses who won the Test, the Alabama, and the Personal Ensign at Saratoga are back at Saratoga. I mean, this is kind of a who's who, even though it's just a field of 6.
Yeah, and Idiomatic is definitely the who of the who's who.
Right. She's the capital H, right?
Exactly.
Or capital W.
13 starts, 10 wins, 1 second. That to me is the most impressive stat, is the 10 wins and only 1 second. That means that if you want to beat her and you think you can do it in the last 16th of a mile, you're not doing it. I'm telling you that. She can find that extra reserve energy that is required. That was definitely required in the Breeders' Cup Distaff last November at Santa Anita, when the whole field kind of fell apart over a very deep and tiring track, at least for a West Coast type of track. And yet somehow she managed to hang on and win that race. She looked to me like she was pretty much well spent at the 8th pole in her most recent race, the comeback race. And yet you look up, as he's pointed out to me, and said, you look up and see who's coming, and you look back, and all of a sudden she's 3 in front,
Yeah.
So she always finds that power that you don't think a normal horse has. And while there is speed in this race again, as there was last time, she's going to find a way. And I tried to look around and try to maybe Raging Sea. I mean, the Curlin's always get a second look, and I thought maybe she's developing, and maybe she could be the recipient of a pace that would promote her. Daughter of Curlin, so I think she could run second, but I'm not picking against Idiomatic. I mean, I'm not saying that she's a bet at 3 to 5 in the morning line, but as the sporting the fan of me wants to see her continue to win, because I like to see champions win.
Raging Sea by Curlin, Idiomatic by Curlin. So you couldn't even trump a Curlin with a Curlin. I
couldn't do it.
Therein, you had yourself a handicapping problem. Let's go back to the La Troyenne and watch the win by Idiomatic at Churchill.
They're off the turn. Idiomatic, Darth Vader, Pretty Mischievous coming down the center, and Free Like a Girl with Clear sailing up the inside. There's 1 furlong to go. Idiomatic set down for the drive, and she's digging in. Free Like a Girl, Darth Vader, Pretty Mischievous chasing the champion home. Idiomatic turns back all challengers, and she glides under the wire to win by 3. Good effort there. Free Like a Girl settles for second. Pretty Mischievous was third, and Darth Vader fourth.
Jeff, I wrote up this race for the Express Bet race of the week, the Phipps race number 7 on Saturday at Saratoga. And from a gambling standpoint, I couldn't find an exacta that I feel good about because I think it's pretty even between Raging Sea and Pretty Mischievous. I think those two are both going to be bet underneath in the exactas, and you don't want to take both of them. You're kind of going to pull any value out that you have there. I think it's too short to play intra race. So I looked at a daily double because you got the Woody Stevens in the 8th race. We're not going to handicap that grade 2 for the show here, but I thought in the Woody Stevens, we are going to look at the Woody Stevens next. Yeah, I was thinking it was a grade 2, but that's upgraded to a grade 1. So I was looking at daily doubles from a gambling standpoint in this race. You say, what do you do with Idiomatic? I don't think you want to play exactas or tries, or certainly not tries in a 6-horse field with a heavy favorite like this. If you think this horse is going to win Idiomatic, I think you got to look at the multi-race bets, race 6 into race 7, race 7 into race 8. So that's the way I approached it. I'm going to go after some daily doubles, race 7 to race 8. So let's just go to the 8th next, then the Woody Stevens, and take a look at the lineup in this one. Bookham Dano down on the inside. You've got Imagination for Baffert, Valentine Candy, who ran roughshod this year at Oaklawn through its stakes program. Prince of Monaco coming off the layoff since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile for Baffert. We'll talk about that one in a bit. Nash, a horse who's cross-entered in the Matt Win at Churchill, but he's been training in New York. I'm assuming he's going to stay in New York and run there for Brad Cox. Who else do we have in here? We've got Nutella Fella in the field, a stakes winner over the track last year at Saratoga. Good looking group of 12, Jeff, but I know you've got your eye on one from your backyard.
Prince of Monaco was really highly regarded last year when he was a 2-year-old son of Speightstown. And he won his first start at Los Alamitos by 8, not because Bob didn't think he could win at Del Mar, but he wanted to kickstart him and get him going. He was ready to run. Bob doesn't usually run at Santa Anita with his 2-year-olds. He did last year with Moose, but basically he waits. And if he really thinks the horse is sitting on ready, he'll give him a little bit of a run at Los Al and then hit Del Mar and go right into stakes. So he won his first start by 8. Didn't even break that day, but he just kind of waltzed around. Then he comes into the Best Pal, and then he's got Muth, who had won as impressively as you could win at Santa Anita, and he just blew him away. I mean, you don't blow Muth away that effortlessly. So he won that race. I think Bob was battling some issues with him, though, after that. He ran him back in the Del Mar Futurity. I mean, when you're 5 cents on the dollar, you're probably going to take the grade 1, even if you're, half, And he won that race, but his buyer number dropped from 103 to 87. So he didn't run anywhere near as good, even in winning the grade 1. And then, of course, in the Juvenile, he was fading 5th. And I don't really think he's a 2-turn horse anyway. All right, puts him away, brings him back. Not going to be a Derby-type horse, so there's no point in getting him cranked up in the winter. Brings him back, and the way this colt has been training, I mean, he looks like he's ready to take on Godzilla, King Kong, anybody else you want to throw at him. If we have a gate work that here it is, he's on the outside. And what you're going to notice about this gate work, he's going to work 111 and 1. He is not asked a drop. He breaks 3 in front, but they didn't want that to happen. So he kind of takes back. He does it easily. He's not fighting. He's not rank. He's not pulling. He's just, this looks like a 103, I mean, that's a 5/8 and 103. And Jeremy, I mean, I can't tell you how impressed I am with Prince of Monaco. I think he's ready to be a monster among 3-year-olds and then pick it up in the older division in the fall.
And sprinting looks to be his game, right? I mean, I know he did try the one longer race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but obviously shelved after that. He may get a chance to go long out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare at some point in time. You don't pay $950,000 for a horse that you think's just going to be a sprinter, but he looks to be a damn good sprinter, and that's the thing. And I think that's probably where his hay will be made this year. And, there are big races all the way to the end of the year, the Malibu at Santa Anita that you could be looking at in December. But between now and then, there's a lot of good sprint races. The Woody Stevens, I mean, off of this workout here, I mean, looks like he is ready to rock and roll. Flavian Pratt is regular rider from last year, rides him back for Baffert. Prince of Monaco going to be a tough out, I think, in the Woody Stevens. I thought the horses from Oaklawn, Nash, if he stays in the field, and Valentine Candy are a little underrated. I think Valentine Candy's one that you definitely want to give a lot of respect to in here. Another Justify. I mean, what a run it's been with the particular crop of 3-year-olds. But Valentine Candy, I mean, his races at Oaklawn, he just ran through it from December all the way through the end of the meet in April 27th. He won 4 3-year-old stakes races in the sprint ranks and did so. And every time he ran, there was like another horse who was kind of like the hot shot up and comer into the stakes ranks at Oaklawn, and he just kind of shoved them aside. I don't know why they sent him to Turfway to run on the synthetic in the Animal Kingdom stakes. That's his only loss in his last 4 in his 5 starts this year. I think Valentine Candy's one to definitely consider in here, but Prince of Monaco off that big work, definitely one you've got to consider in the Woody Stevens. Of course, the Woody Stevens named for the great Hall of Fame trainer Woodford Cephas Stevens, Woody C. Stevens, and he won the Belmont Stakes in what is kind of the Joe DiMaggio streak. DiMaggio, of course, the 56-game hitting streak, a major league record that many think will never be broken. Woody won the Belmont 5 years in a row, 1982 to 1986. Conquistador Cielo, Caveat, Swale, Creme Fraiche, Dancing Connection, several of those in the slop. It didn't matter. He just went on with it. I got a little trivia for you now, Jeff.
All right.
Which horse lost for Woody Stevens when he was going for 6 in a row?
Well,
1987. Of course, the 1987 Belmont Stakes was a great one. Bet Twice, Crypto Clearance, Gulch. Ali Sheba, of course, was going for the Triple Crown without Lasix and was unsuccessful there. Who did Woody Stevens have that busted his streak? It's a well-named, a well-known horse. You'll know the name.
well, that was 37 years ago, right? So
that's just
I'm not sure what I did yesterday. So I'm sure I'll remember. If you mentioned the horse, I don't remember who it was, but I'll probably know him pretty well.
No, you will. Gone West. You know Gone
Yeah.
West. Yeah. So that was the horse who broke the streak for Woody Stevens. So if you ever get it, that could be valuable in bar trivia. So if any of our listeners are out there now and you're walking around Caroline Street or one of those bar areas at Saratoga this weekend and you're trying to make a quick $20, try to throw the trivia out there if you can name the horse that Woody Stevens lost the Belmont Stakes with.
I remember the horse really well. The Mr. Prospector horse, who was a very, very successful stallion.
Yes.
I figured he would be. But I remember that he was first considered a miler and then maybe a middle distance. And I'm not sure what Woody was thinking, other than maybe he thought, well, I'm going to try to keep my streak going.
I got to run something, yeah.
Right, so I'll put this horse in. He's no 1.5 mile horse, I promise you that. But he was a good horse. A really, really good horse, a brilliant horse. And he was just asked to do something that he wasn't capable of doing. But among that group, he was good. And but that I would have not. The only reason why I didn't remember is I didn't think Woody would run him 1.5 miles. Then I realized, man, now that you mentioned that, now I know why he did.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? He needed a horse to get to Belmont, so we're going to try to make this horse 1.5 miles, but it didn't work out.
Go wire to wire. Yeah.
Well, one last thing about the race this weekend in the Woody Stevens, Bookham Dano, a horse who just ran his eyeballs out when knocked by Forever Young at the wire, out knotted by a nose in the Saudi Derby. What do you make of Bookham Dano? He really earned a lot of international respect with that trip to Saudi Arabia.
I think he's a good horse. I don't like the 7/8 from the rail at Saratoga for him. It's great if you are quick enough to get up inside and then keep going, especially if you notice the track is pro inside, which at Saratoga it can be that way on some ends. But here's the thing is, I'm looking at his work tab. It looks a little light to me, and he's got the rail, and he better break because otherwise they're going to fold over in front of him. Yeah, and that's going to be a tough task. If he had drawn outside, I would have given him more consideration than I am. But there's some fast horses in here. Frost Free is very fast. Vlahos for Doug O'Neill is very fast, which is another reason why I like Prince of Monaco, because he shows me, as he did in the Best Pal, that he doesn't, not only can he sit off the pace, I think he wants to be ridden that way. Right. And so he'll sit back with Pratt, who will obviously ride him right, sit back and then, and I think that's why I like him, because there is plenty of pace in here, and Book and from that inside draw is going to be tough sledding there from that post.
And circling back to that workout we watched with Prince of Monaco, the fact that he broke like a shot and then came back and was kind to his riders, what you're talking about. That's how a horse can sit. If he'd have just ran off and got into the bit and that worked, then you'd be a little more worried about whether he could sit with a pace like this. But he looks to be a professional with the ability to shut things off. Let's move next to race number 9 on the card on Saturday. I think this is the first turf race that we're going to look at for Saturday. Indeed, it is 5.5 furlong turf sprint. The Japer Stakes here is a grade 1 for $500,000. You don't get many $500,000 grade 1s for the turf sprint scene. So a big field, of course, is going to show up when you do that. Field of 12 with some also eligibles. Should be a pretty good betting race. And these are some horses we're familiar with over the turf sprint scene. Arzak's made some hay in Kentucky. Big Invasion in New York and down in Florida. Cogburn last time out on Derby weekend was outstanding. A good looking group in here, Jeff. And you got Mischief Magic, a horse who won a Breeders' Cup race back in his Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint back in 2022. So we got some named players in this race. How do you see it shaking out?
Well, I went back and watched Cogburn in the turf sprint at Churchill. He had the 13 hole going 14 going 5.5. And I looked at his form prior to the race and I said, I just don't know. He doesn't look that quick to me. And from that post, I'm going to take a stand against Cogburn, which I regretted about the quarter pole. But I went back and then watched that race again. And there's nothing that Cogburn did in that race that would lead me to believe that he won't win again. I mean, he was outside 3. He didn't save ground. He was pressing the pace. He put away the speed horses. The closers were coming, but they made absolutely no impact on him in the final stages. I mean, I went back and watched Mischief Magic, who got a dream run, got through, wasn't really gaining anything in the final stages of that race. Cogburn had just, drew off and won. And it was his first start since September. As a 5-year-old, could it be that he's even better now than he was last year? And he was pretty darn good last year. Got a win at Saratoga at this course and distance on soft ground, which may come into play if there's rain on Friday. So I ended up saying, why am I picking against this horse? Why am I trying to? I mean, I would have rather had him at 8-1 than the 2-1 he is here. But I'm just trying to figure out who's going to win this race. And I don't see any reason why Cogburn won't beat the same bunch he just basically beat.
And I know it was a grade 3 last year when he won at Saratoga. This is a grade 1. This is supposed to be tougher, but he beat no balls in there. And that horse as good as any turf sprinter in America in 2023 last year. So that was a legit grade 1 kind of turf sprint win, winning the Troy, despite it being grade 3 in its designation. Last time out in the Churchill Downs Turf Sprint, that was a grade 2, but also plays very close to this grade 1 in terms of quality.
Coppola is the leader. Cogburn right up alongside second. Mustache between those two, third as they come to the top of the stretch. It's a break of another 3 to Mr. Who's fourth on the outside. They're coming into the final 3/16, and Cogburn has taken the lead. It is now Cogburn in front with 1 furlong to run, opening up the lead by a length and a half. And then comes Coppola. Coming through on the inside is Philo de Ariana, and then Mischief Magic, who's late on the scene, but it is Cogburn. And Cogburn won it by 2.5. Philo de Ariana was second, Mischief Magic was third, and Coppola was fourth.
Big Invasion was in that race and did nothing at all. I expect he could improve, though, at Saratoga, where he's run tremendous over the years. You get Joel Rosario on a late running turf sprinter. I think there could be a bounce back effort for Big Invasion, but he's going to need a major turnaround to win this thing. But if you're looking at the exotics, and that last race performance is going to actually, obviously inflate his price some, maybe in the 6, 8, 10-1 range. Big Invasion underneath might be one to consider in this particular spot. I think he's going to like Saratoga a lot more than he did last time. I mean, he's not going to run any worse than he did when he just didn't show up for work at all in that race at Churchill.
Well, I talk about Churchill being a funny course sometimes, and some horses just swim in it and they don't fire. And I think you're spot on with Big Invasion. Now he's going to need some luck here, as he always seems to need, but his form at Saratoga is outstanding. And with Rosario, he knows him now pretty well and knows how to ride him. I think he'll get, I don't know whether he can win, but if you're playing underneath, I mean, he's got to be on your ticket somewhere, Big Invasion. But based on what I just saw, not only is Cogburn pretty quick enough to be, in the first flight, but I think he's probably better following horses, and from where this race shapes up, I think he's going to draft in and maybe behind the first flight and then kick home with it, as he did when he won on this course last year.
Let's move to the 10th race on the card. It's the big three on Saturday. Will be races 10, 11, and 12, starting with the Metropolitan Handicap, known more colloquially as the Met Mile. 1 mile at Saratoga is going to start on the chute, an elbow start, a little dog leg left, and then one full turn around the far turn to the finish line here. So a little different configuration at Saratoga than this would be in a traditional Belmont Park Met Mile, where it's a true one-turn race. It's kind of a pseudo 2-turn, 1.5 turn, however you want to look at it. What an excellent field we do have. It's a select field of just 6, but you have National Treasure, winner of the Preakness Stakes and the Pegasus World Cup, runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile by Azat last year, behind Cody's Wish. You've got Post Time, a horse who's from Maryland, who's just gone on a great run, winning the General George and the Carter this year. Going to try to get up to the Grade 1 level. Blazing Sevens, runner-up in last year's Preakness Stakes, missed just by a head behind National Treasure, so they renew acquaintances. Hoist the Gold's been in a lot of these big sprint and middle distance races over the last couple of years. He's a millionaire. And White Abario, the $5 million earner who won last year's Breeders' Cup Classic. But maybe more importantly to this race, he won the Whitney Stakes at 1 1/8 over the track at Saratoga. You know he can handle it in the Spa. 6 1/4 length victory last year over Zandon in the Whitney. Really, that was the race to put White Abario on the national handicap scene map. He was a 3-year-old who was of high quality. He won the Florida Derby, but nobody looked at him as a serious superstar. And White Abario as a 3-year-old. And at the beginning of his 4-year-old, the same thing was the case, but he switched from trainer Saffie Joseph to Rick Dutrow, and that just launching pad, Jeff, took off in the Whitney last year, and he carried that Whitney win into the Breeders' Cup Classic where he ran tremendous. I don't know what White Abario we have this year because he ran so poorly, 10th in the Saudi Cup, and we haven't seen him since going overseas in February. What do we get out of White Abario coming up on Saturday? And if it's not him, whom might it be?
Well, I haven't seen any video of White Abario's workout, so I don't know where he's at. Not that has ever helped me because I've never been right about him. I've picked him a lot of times and he's run terrible, and then I've picked against him and he's run lights out. So I think Rick Dutrow, if he hears this, will be happy that I'm not going to pick White Abario, which probably puts him in the winner's circle. Now, if you look at this race, the pace situation here going a 1-turn mile at Saratoga, it's not really a 1-turn mile. It's a, what is it called? A 1.5-turn mile? I don't know.
Yeah.
But National Treasure, and you see this not a lot, but I always like to notice this with good horses when they turn back in distance, because National Treasure won his debut at Del Mar, sprinting from an inside draw, which is terrible at Del Mar. Usually it's deeper down there. Won that race so impressively that Bob tried him in the American Pharoah, which was a natural, stepping stone if you want to get to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And do you know that National Treasure, after winning that race, that maiden race at Del Mar, has never sprinted since? And now he's he's acting up to a 1-turn mile or 1.5-turn mile. And you remember his race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile? That was a full 2-turn race, and he ran tremendous that day. Now he's inside speed, breaking on that turn, race that doesn't have a whole lot of zip in it.
Right.
And I'm thinking that while White Abario has some speed for sure, and I think they'll probably send him out of there and get a stalking position, this lead for National Treasure is going to be his for the asking. And he can do that. I mean, he won the Preakness Gate Wire. But this distance, I think, or 7/8 if they ever want to back him up again, I think is perfect for him. And the way he's been training, he thinks Prince of Monaco's been training well. What about National Treasure, And I think he's the second choice here at 8-5. And again, I will take the 8-5 if I can get it.
Here he is working at Santa Anita on the 1st of June before heading out to Saratoga. Wide in a team drill here. They picked up a little company from another stable and just goes right by him here. National Treasure to the outside. And Jeff, like you said, this is a horse who's now getting an inside post position on a configuration of a track that will definitely flatter that inside post position. Only a field of 6, so the outside horses like White Abario are not going to be tremendously disadvantaged. advantage. But this horse looks cranked. He looks like a powder keg. And with that inside, like you said, he'll probably just come busting out of there under Flavian Pratt. Hoist the Gold with Johnny Velasquez in post 5, probably the other horse who wants to be near the front. And then White Barrios kind of shuffles out of there second or third. And the race will be on, right? You would expect these two favorites at some point going into the far turn. White Barrio and National Treasure are probably going to, feel each other's breath a little bit. And the race should be on from there.
Well, I'm going to give you my second horse, and he might even be my first horse because I have too much respect for post time. Here's a horse who's run 10 times, 8 wins, a second and a third. So he's another horse that if he can see you, he'll try to beat you. Just ran out of ground in the Westchester. I think the jock might have waited a little bit too long. But if I'm right about National Treasure and he wires the field, I have a pretty good feel about post time, at least picking up the pieces to be second. So if I can somehow get White Barrio out of there, I like my chances with my exacta here. So 8-5 over 7-2. If we can get White Barrio out of that exacta at 6-5, I might be able to make a pretty decent score here. And if post time runs him down, I wouldn't put it past him. Then I'll have it the other way as well, for free tickets at least. But the way I see National Treasure breeze, and he went in 11 before that. This was just a little bit of a blowout last Saturday. And post time, you just have to respect him so much. I just think this is a good gambling race for me. I might be wrong, but at least I'm going in there with a pretty fair degree of confidence.
Post time's got one of those turn of foot that you just love. I mean, he'll just look at the top of the stretch like he's not doing anything, and all of a sudden he's going to come like a turf miler, like he's picking them up over the last eighth of a mile. So it's going to be a very interesting edition of the Met Mile, one of the most entertaining races that we see on the calendar almost each and every year. So very much looking forward to that one. Race number 10 on Saturday at Saratoga. To the 11th we go. It's the Manhattan traditional lead-in race on the grass before the Belmont Stakes. Mile and 3/16 on the grass, usually a mile and a quarter at Belmont Park. So this one actually shortened by 110 yards, a 16th of a mile. The Manhattan Stakes, $1 million race. We've got a field lining up in this one with another good field size. They've got 9 in here, not a capacity type field, but certainly should make for a competitive and even balanced betting race. Again, with fields of 9, I'm really looking to try to dig into an exacta pull in here or a straight win play for me. Tries and supers. I want a little more depth to the field. We'll see who Jeff likes on top in this particular spot. Jeff, you got one in here with a circle around it yet?
I do, but it's a contentious race. I'm very busy, who I really liked in the Turf Classic at Churchill. A couple of things there. Number one, I'll bring it up again. There are horses who just don't grip that turf course, and I think that might have been one of the problems that I'm very busy had. And the other one was, he was badly victimized by a lack of pace. He was dead in the water, 50 yards out of the gate. He didn't get position, which I thought he could at least lay it somewhere in the middle, but he was far out of it. And then 3/4 and 14-1, last 3/8 and 36, and he went very wide, trying to build up his momentum. I'm just going to draw a line through that race. Now, I'm definitely going to use him. If I'm playing Rolling Exotics, he's on my main ticket. But the one that I have to put on top is Measured Time, not only because it's Appleby and Buick, a colt by Frankel, who's won 5 out of 7. I can't say he was favored in the Dubai Turf because there's no gambling over there. I don't know what the odds were, but he would have been here, I'm sure. He was visually so impressive in his 2 prior runs, including the Jebel Hatta, who just toyed with this field. But what happened in the last race, he was bottled up along the rail. He was crying out to go, and he had nowhere to go. And I think he just got mad. He was just he was like buried. And finally, he did get clear, hit the front, opened up in that last race, and then the closers came from way on the outside. I'm not even sure he saw them. So I think if Measured Time comes back for Appleby and runs the race he ran prior to that in Maidan and the Jebel Hatta, or some of the other races he's got, I think outside draw and all, it's a mile and 3/16. It's forever to the clubhouse turn. I don't think that's going to bother him. And he's got enough tactical speed. I think Measured Time's going to be hard to beat. If he's 7-2 with Appleby and Buick on a horse that had 2 back-to-back 120 time form ratings. And let me tell you about 120 time form. That puts you it may be, right below the very, very, very best horses over there. And I think this is that group's better than this group. So for me, 7-2 on measured time, and I'm not going to get beat by him. I'm very busy if he turns back to his best race as well.
Here's measured time winning the Jebel Hada at Meydan.
Mate here now, up into third, still rolling into it as well was Measured Time, followed by Salawi. Then came still about 6 lengths off the leader was Spirit Dancer from Erzincan. El Patriota takes the inside passage. Ottoman Fleet starting to get warm down the outside. Sandonado having to come off his heels this time. No inside runs at this point in time as Measured Time takes over. Measured Time at the 200 metres from Ottoman Fleet starting to level up. Spirit Dancer. Moores gets checked for a run. Sandonado trying to run on. Measured Time. Measured Time steals the Jebel Hada. Measured Time goes on to win well. 2 lengths here in the Jebel Hada, beats Ottoman Fleet.
So Jeff's top pick to the outside, Measured Time at 7-2. The morning line favorite is Program Trading, 5-2. This is a tale of 2 horses, really, or 2 stories, however you want to spin the PR. He's a length and a quarter away from being undefeated in 6 career starts. That's highly impressive. He's also 3/4 of a length away from losing his last 4. I mean, he has won 3 photo finishes in his last 4 races, including the Turf Classic, the race leading up to the Kentucky Derby. He'll handle the crowd. He'll handle the hubbub in the situation. But that Turf Classic was a race where you could kind of throw a blanket over them. Top 5 of them all within 4 lengths at the wire. So sometimes when you get a close finish in a big rematch like that, the best thing I think is to go ahead and take a fresh face. Go for somebody new in there, and that's what Jeff is doing with Measured Time. Let's go next to the Belmont Stakes, the feature race of the nation coming up this weekend. Final jewel of the Triple Crown. It is 1.25 miles on the main track at Saratoga. It's going to look a lot more like the Travers than what we're used to seeing the Belmont Stakes, which is usually the 1.5 miles, of course, at Belmont Park. A field of 10 has entered this year's Belmont Stakes. They were entered on Monday night. And here's how the field lines up with David Aragona's morning line from Naira. He's got Sierra Leone pegged as the 9-5 favorite. I 100% agree on the price. Mind Frame second choice in here at 7-2. Kentucky Derby winner Mystic Dan at 5-1. The Preakness winner Seize the Gray at 8-1. Jeff, Belmont Stakes, start off the conversation.
Mind Frame he has that look of maybe being an Arrogate type of horse. He's only had the 2 starts, but I remember when Arrogate came to the Travers, and he'd been running in allowance races at Del Mar, and he just exploded on the scene. And Mind Frame is he's got a little bit of a head start in terms of getting to where he wants to be here. He's got 2 runs in the Belmont. I think even going farther back, I remember when Conquistador Cielo had beaten older horses with a big advantage in weight that day, came back in 5 days and won the Belmont and put himself on the scene after winning this, the previous race 5 days before. And Mind Frame looks like he's ready to join the party now. I mean, more just kind of like the way Arcangelo was last year when he won the Peter Pan, but and I liked him because of that. But he had something to prove. And Mind Frame from the 10 hole, I think is going to draft over and get a great trip. He's not going to be in front. I don't think he really necessarily needs to be. He was in front of the allowance race because nobody went. But the way he trains, he's so laid back. I won't say he's lazy. I'm not going to put that on him, but I will say that he's so handy. He isn't like driving a car where you go fast, you go slow. He just does whatever he's asked. And I think what happens here is that he gets outside, drafts over, gets a trouble-free trip with no dirt in his face. Whereas you always have to expect that Sierra Leone's going to run into some roadblock. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for Sierra Leone. As I said a couple of days ago, Jeremy, this horse is 2 noses away from being undefeated. And he's training really well. And obviously he's cost himself the 2 losses by doing things stupid and lugging in and pulling himself up. Now we've got a change in bit. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that means because I really don't know what they're figuring out or trying to do. All I know is in looking at this workout, Jeremy, he's on the inside. He looks fantastic, breezing just as great as you can and not lugging in. So I think you're going to get the best of Sierra Leone, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get the best of Mind Frame. And I think those are the 2 that are going to battle it out in the final furlong.
Yeah, and Sierra Leone, of course, just a nose short in the Kentucky Derby with Gaff Leone riding. They make the switch to Flavien Prat for the first time. Chad Brown trying to win the Belmont Stakes for the first time. He's won the Preakness a few times on occasion, and he came awfully close to winning his first Kentucky Derby with this colt. If he can maintain a straight course, we've talked about the way he paddles in the front left, and that's maybe physically why he's doing what he's doing, but they're going to try to correct it with a little better steering mechanism. The bit, of course, is that piece of metal that goes through in the horse's mouth that helps the jockey with the reins to steer. We'll see if that or the jockey change to Flavien Prat makes a difference. Now, I won't blame the bearing in on Tyler Gaff Leone because we've seen other jockeys have the exact same problem with Sierra Leone in previous races. So the jockey change probably isn't going to be as big of a deal as if there's any sort of change to the training pattern or where he's at on the racetrack. Maybe not, maybe being to the inside and pinned to the rail is going to be something that just with adrenaline forces him that he has to run a little bit straighter. And that could be of benefit. And the fact that he was working on the inside there makes you think maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of trip they want to work out. Of course, drawing the 9-hole, Pratt's going to take back. It'll be him and Honor Marie to the back of the pack in this year's Belmont Stakes. So he can pick wherever he wants to be on the racetrack. If he wants to rally to the inside and save ground, he'll have that option. If he wants to swing around horses like they did in the Kentucky Derby, he'd have that option as well. Sierra Leone's going to come with his race. And we've seen the favorite in the Belmont Stakes has run first or second 7 straight years. This has not been a goofy race with goofy results. The favorites have delivered their performances as expected. I would suspect that Sierra Leone is going to be part of the exacta. I think he's going to be tough. Mindframe could either win this race or there could be an implosion, right? He could be the next Arrowgate, or he could be a horse who's asked to do too much too soon, but the talent is immense. It's there. So I think we've got a trusted given in Sierra Leone. We've got a who knows with Mindframe that has just a tremendous ceiling. I ended up falling somewhere in the middle because of that. And so I went back to Resilience, a horse I picked in the Kentucky Derby to run second, Jeff. This is a horse I've liked quite a bit. In the Derby, I was Fierceness and Resilience, and at the top of the stretch, Fierceness was giving up the lead, and he gave it up to the Resilience going by him for just a brief moment. They were not talking about running in the Belmont Stakes, trainer Bill Mott. In fact, he said, we're going to shorten up a little bit. And I tend to agree with that. He's got a lot of turf milers on the damn side of his pedigree, but he has trained so well since the since the Derby that Mott is putting back into the Belmont mix. And Bill Mott's not a guy he doesn't ship the shine shoes, as they say. I mean, he's here to run. And this is an excellent work from Resilience. And I think we're going to get the price. So Mindframe absolutely is the upside of this race. Sierra Leone is absolutely the trusted horse. But the best shot that I can find for me at the best price for me in this particular race is going to be Resilience, because I think he's going to be every bit of 8 to 10 to 1. And in the morning line, he's listed at 10, and I would take that, and I would play him down to about 8 to 1. But certainly, if he gets hot on the tote, I wouldn't want him at too short of a price. If you're going to beat the Derby winner, the Preakness winner, the obvious favorite in this race, and the obvious horse who has the biggest ceiling in this race, you've got four pegs you've got to knock off to win this race. You should get double-digit odds to pull it off. So I'm going to give him a shot in here. But if his price gets too low, I'm not as interested in him. Certainly if he starts dipping down, 6, 5, 6, 7 to 1 like that, you got to get a number on him, but I'm going to take a chance.
Well, I think his race in the Derby was good. He ran great until about the 8th pole, where maybe that was as far as he really wanted to run. I mean, not too many into mischiefs improve as the distances increase. Right. They're pretty good up the middle distance, though. But from the 2-hole, if he could just drop in somewhere in the second flight, maybe Cecil Gray's going to go, and the Wine Steward, maybe they may try to send him. He's got a little bit of tactical speed, and Dornoch, I think the only way he can run well is on the lead or close to it. Why can't Resilience just kind of draft in behind those and just sit there, save ground, make his run? And
he's got a really nice run. It's just, is it enough to sustain once he makes that nice run?
See, I don't know if he's good enough to win. Is he good enough to complete the try or be somewhere in there? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So for me, he offers value on that wager, but I can't. I can't. I'd like to see him win at 30 to 1 for you. That would be great. But on the other hand, I do think he's better than. I think he ran much better than the line shows in the Derby, which gives him a chance. And here, a little bit less than half the field size, a good inside draw, which he did not have last time out, and hopefully a trouble-free trip for a horse that obviously is well liked by Mott, who is not in business to do anything stupid. Now, if this had been a different barn, you'd probably say, well, they're just happy to be there and they're taking a shot. Mott doesn't have to take shots, you know. If he thinks he's good enough, that should be good enough for me, and I respect him, you know. And so I don't know if he can win, but he's on the ticket somewhere.
Looking forward to a deep edition of the Belmont Stakes. It's the first rematch between, or not a rematch because they didn't face each other, but the first time we have a matchup of the Kentucky Derby winner and the Preakness winner since 2013 when it was Orb and Oxbow. And I look back in the stats and the trends. 7 times since 1990, we've had this situation with a different Derby winner and a different Preakness winner in the Belmont. The Derby winners, sorry, Mystic Dan fans, have not won in any of those 7 attempts. The Preakness winner actually has won it 4 times, and 3 times it was a horse who was not the winner of the Derby or the Preakness. So it's Seize the Gray or somebody else, if you want to believe that trend, going back to 1990. That's going to wrap up our coverage here of the Belmont Stakes Festival for Friday and Saturday stakes races. Be sure to check out the first Belmont Stakes wager guide, available for download within the First Bet app, or you can check it out on your desktop, news.first.com, and then click on the wager guide logo, and that'll take you in for all the expert picks, analysis, stats, trends, workout videos, plenty more for you in the wager guide. Millie Ball takes a deep dive into her picks for the Acorn Stakes on Friday as well. We've got a lot of great links to content across the First family. John White's analysis of the Belmont Stakes. Scott Shapiro's got an interesting gambler's piece for you at First Bet, and also linked out of that wager guide, where he takes the 13 special wagers that they have, 13 of them, multi-race wagers, pick 4s, pick 5s, pick 6s, and he ranks them 1 to 13, which ones are the best bet to the worst bet. So if you've got all these races and you're trying to figure out what the heck do I do, which ones are the best, which ones aren't the best, Scott will give you a little bit of help on that, looking at things like field size, takeout, bettability, how strong the favorites in those particular races might be. So if you need a little help strategizing and setting up your bankroll for the weekend, check out Scott's piece. Jeff, I'll give you the final thought here on the podcast.
Well, I'll have best plays for Friday and Saturday on the website, expressbet.com. So I'll have a few of those there that you can check out. Looking forward to hopefully a good day of racing in terms of the weather. And these days are fun. I mean, especially when you got a race like the Belmont, where you've got, sometimes the Belmont comes up a little soft. You don't have the Derby winner, you don't have the Preakness winner, and you just get a bunch of horses that are just whatever they are. But this is a good race. Even, I mean, it's not that often you get both the Derby and the Preakness winner in the race, and then you have some young, improving newcomers that are joining the party as well. It's fun, and it's going to be hopefully good gambling as well. So good luck and enjoy not only Friday but Saturday as well. And again, we'll have check out the guide if you haven't already, and certainly check out our analysis and Scott's analysis and whatever Jeremy is going to be offering. Good information at expressbet.com.
All right. On behalf of everybody with First and my partner, Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Enjoy the weekend. Jeff and I will be back on Tuesday to recap it all on the It's Official podcast. Be sure to